When exploring the Mojave, the player can find weapons, armor, and all sorts of other items by looting their environment, as well as by taking items off of defeated or dead NPCs. But in New Vegas, there are also multiple graves scattered around the map that can only be accessed with a shovel that also contain a random selection of items. Now, usually the stuff you find in said graves aren't all that great, but what if, for some reason, you could only use the items you found inside these graves? Could you finish the game? Well, that's what I aim to find out, as today we figure out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas as a Graverobber? Shout out to Neil for suggesting this idea a while back. It has been stuck in my head for a while and I'm happy to finally get around to doing it. Upon beginning the creation process, I give myself what is probably my favourite name yet in one of these runs. For my special stats, I max out strength and then increase intelligence, endurance and luck to 9, and then I just drain every other stat. I have a feeling that ammo is going to be incredibly scarce, and so melee weapons are probably going to be my safest bet this run. I should also make it clear now that whenever I get a shovel, it will be strictly for digging up graves. I'm not allowing myself to use it as a weapon. For my tag skills, I chose melee weapons, repair and speech. I'm hoping I won't need to use speech to skip any encounters, but given the fact that my items will be incredibly limited, I will probably need it as a last resort when it comes to the final boss if I'm out of items. Finally for traits, I just took the Wild Wasteland perk. I could have taken Heavy Handed for more base melee damage, but I put 9 in luck to hopefully land some crits, as it could be a lifesaver depending on the situation. As soon as I get the Pip-Boy, I make sure to drop every single item that I have. While you could make the argument that since I have just risen from the grave, they are technically viable for the run, I'm choosing to leave them in Doc Mitchell's floor. Now, while Chet in Goodsprings does sell a shovel, and I can afford it with the caps I start with, I also didn't loot those 18 bottle caps, and in my mind, that means I cannot spend them. This doesn't slow me down for long though, as just outside of town where you would go if you actually for some reason decide to do the full tutorial with Sunny Smiles, there's a shovel leaning up against this pipe just begging to be used. With my looting utensil in hand, I make my way up to Goodsprings Cemetery to see what I have to work with. There are 5 graves in total, and from them I got 10 9mm rounds, 9 .357 Magnum rounds, 8 bottle caps, 5 12 gauge rounds, and from the last grave a silenced 22 pistol with no ammo. Yeah, not the best first haul all things considered, which means I'm going to have to get my trump card early. Whenever I mentioned that I was going to do this run, a lot of you immediately mentioned Chance's knife that is just north of Goodsprings, and as such, that is what I'm going to get. Before that though, I go back to Chet and buy a random assortment of items that will leave me with just the 8 caps I recovered from the grave and then drop the items I just purchased instantly. I'm just doing this to make sure I can have an accurate representation of the money that I can use. Heading north of Goodsprings is never really advised, especially this early on, but considering I have no way to defend myself, I'm not really left with a choice. Thankfully, I just take my time, make sure to stay up as high as possible so I can avoid the nearby cazadors, and then carefully hop down to the grave and collect my spoils. The knife itself is obviously what we want, as it is, in all honesty, a very good weapon for a melee and crit chance build, but the Great Khan's armor that it comes with is also pretty good for some much wanted protection. I'll just need to make sure to unequip it when I'm around the NCR unless I want to be perforated. Now that I had a weapon, I figured it was time to put it to the test, and seeing how Goodsprings Cemetery recently got some open spaces, I figured I may as well fill them back up. Needless to say, the knife is very good and it cuts through everyone down in a matter of moments. That said, I need to be careful with the condition of the weapon because if it breaks, I'm going to be in a world of trouble. I decided to take the long way to the strip this time, as just like the No Pip-Boy run, I'm probably only going to be able to heal myself by drinking from water sources and resting in beds, so I'd rather avoid risky areas for the time being. That, and there are some graves I can rob if I take the long way. The first 2 I want to hit are just outside the canyon wreckage which lead to the divide. They're easy enough to get to by going up behind the NCR outpost at Prim. The graves are also only guarded by a single coyote, so I also don't need to worry about my health either. All I get from the graves is more 9mm and 12 gauge rounds, which I still cannot use for now. So, with little to work with, I decided to raid the Bison Steve Hotel. The high speed and crit chance of the knife continue to prove useful, especially given the fact that even with 9 in endurance, the convict's basic weapons tear through my health rather fast. Once they're out of the picture and Beagle is rescued however, I can rest on one of the nearby mattresses to heal back up. Seeing how putting the NCR in control of Prim is a relatively easy quest and gives good experience, I decided to head for the Mojave outpost to see about enlisting some support. I chop up some rad scorpions on the way, as well as help Ranger Jackson with his ant problem, because I don't have the necessary points in barter to skip that part of the quest. With Prim now safe, it was onwards towards Nipton.
I'm gonna be doing this. If you get hit, it's your own fault.
I also decided to fight the Jackal Gang members at the pit stop. I managed to come out on top, but nearly die in the process. Thankfully, there's a makeshift bed nearby to heal up at, but when I do, they immediately respawn, so I fight them again, and then rest up again. And then I murder Oliver Swanwick. At this point, I've come to accept that if you have even a decent melee weapon and use VATS at the right time, that the Legion and Nipton are nothing special and go down just as easily as any other small group of enemies you would normally encounter this early in the game. I then report the great news about Nipton to Ranger Ghost, giving me just enough to level up and max out melee weapons already. As I fast travel back to Nipton, I figured I would go left for once and up the train tracks towards Novak, thinking that it certainly wouldn't be too bad, right? Well, you see, while doing this, I then walked through Prim Pass and became Deathclaw food. Once back in the land of the living, I just play it safe and go right instead. But this time I go up and over the hills instead of following the road as to not get car bombed by the raiders down there. Turns out that this would be one of the smartest decisions I would make this run, as this route ended up taking me to Wolfhorn Ranch, which also happens to have a diggable spot for me to get more items. And unlike the last couple, I hit the jackpot in what I found. Inside the grave, not only did I find more of the same ammo as before, but I also found a 9mm pistol, a cowboy repeater, a Merc grunt outfit to replace my nearly broken Can's armor, and most importantly of all, some brass knuckles that I could use for less threatening enemies and therefore save the durability of Chance's knife for tougher foes. With newfound confidence in this run, I was about to continue on towards Novak when I suddenly remembered the memorial just east of Goodsprings also had 3 more graves that I could loot, so I stopped what I was doing and made my way back there. This also gave me an opportunity to test out the brass knuckles on a rad scorpion, and despite the fact I haven't put a single point in unarmed yet, they're able to do some pretty great damage. But hold on, the good news doesn't stop there, as while 2 of the graves at the memorial were completely empty, the last one made up for it in spades. Oh god, that's a shovel pun. This grave not only had a Silence 22 pistol and a laser rifle inside, but it also had a decent amount of ammo for each one. It also had another grunt outfit that I could use for some repairs. With a new arsenal of weapons at my disposal, I ventured on towards Novak. On the way, I was able to beat up some Viper gunslingers as well as some mole rats with the new knuckle dusters. My only business in Novak was the 2 graves next to the ruined house. Inside these graves, I was able to find more ammo for my Silence pistol, as well as 22 more bottle caps, bringing my total up to a pitiful 30. I then, for whatever reason, decided to go on a bit of a small murder spree around Novak. First was Andy, followed by Cliff, Manny, and then Boone. None of which put up much of a fight. Continuing on, I managed to get more mileage out of the brass knuckles when encountering some Vipers, to the point where I thought I'd be able to fight my way through the NCR at Boulder City. Well, after about 5 attempts, of which always ended with me looking like a block of Swiss cheese, I thought that maybe diplomacy might be better. I, however, lack the skill needed for that, and rather than wait and come back later, I decided that I would instead just kill the Great Khans and be done with it. Lucky for me, they are nowhere near as formidable and I'll go down with a couple of punches. I am still taking a lot of damage in the process though, but that can't really be helped as I have yet to find any better armor. This makes me realise that I'll need to get something to protect myself with, especially if I'm going to be meeting the different factions soon. So, to that end, seeing how I'm at Boulder City, I head up the road to Boulder Beach and begin swimming north in hopes of reaching Bitter Springs. Heading to Bitter Springs probably doesn't sound the smartest move, given that it's surrounded by Cazadors, Night Stalkers, and Lake Lurks from just about every angle, but a lot of people died at Bitter Springs, and as such, there are a decent amount of graves, and at this moment, I am not above looting the grave of a child if it helps me out in the long run. The swim there is pretty danger free. Thanks to my endurance, I can stay under the water for quite some time and therefore avoid any of the brainwaves from the crab people. This is also the first time I've ever found the sunken bomber before starting the Boomer's questline. This would be convenient if I was planning to side with them. I don't think I am this time if I'm honest though, as doing all their quests would just stand to drain my resources, and seeing how I'm already struggling in that regard, it would not be wise to do so. Once I cross the lake, the inevitable happens almost immediately. I am poisoned and killed by the little devils. Next attempt I am a little bit more careful, and rather than trying to run straight to the entrance of Bitter Springs, I take my time and come up through the recreation center, which seems to be a lot safer. From here I easily bypass any Cazadors in the area and make it to where the graves are and prime myself for max looting. There are a lot of graves here, so I'll quickly list the important items I obtained. I got more 9mm, 12 gauge, 357 and 22 rounds, a varmint rifle, 2 more Silence 22 pistols, a 357 revolver, some cat eye, and a whopping 6 more bottle caps. Not exactly the best haul, as I was hoping for maybe some armor or another set of brass knuckles to repair my own, but beggars can't be choosers I suppose. I thought about exploring the surrounding area of Bitter Springs, but I was quickly reminded just how bad an idea that would be when I entered this cave. Instead, I thought heading west towards the strip would probably be my best option. I was able to get the high ground and some fire geckos, and for the first time in a long time could actually use a gun in a Fallout game. Granted, I'm not exactly accurate with them, seeing how I completely focus my build around melee, but for the time being they are a welcome addition, if for nothing else to help save durability on my melee weapons. My journey to the west was prematurely cut short however, as it was going to take me straight through some Deathclaws, and seeing how I couldn't even take out a blind one earlier at Prim Pass, I decided the best course of action is to fast travel back to Boulder City and just take the safe route from there. It ended up not being safe for very long, as thanks to my adventures in Nipton, I gained the attention of some Legion assassins. I had hoped the good folk at the Grubbin Hub would be able to assist me, but even together, we did not stand a chance. Unlike the locals, I was at least lucky enough to escape with my life for the time being. Now, here comes an interesting part. I need to get into Vegas, but lack the caps to do so. I know I could technically get a pass by working with the king, but unless he decides to crawl into the ground and give it to me from beyond the grave, I can't use it. This is when I asked you guys if I'd be allowed to use the caps I dug up to gamble with, and then if I won, I could use the winnings. The majority of you voted that I could use them, but, more interestingly, in the comments you all seem to unanimously agree that if I do, I will need to essentially rebalance this by killing everyone in the casinos. Well, I am a people pleaser, so I went to the Garrets in Freeside and gambled until I had just over 5,000 caps, and once that was done, I began systematically stabbing everyone I could find inside. This was a little tougher than I thought, but in the end I hacked and whacked and chopped that meat. I then presented my caps for the credit check and entered the strip. And now for a mild spoiler. This was the only time I ended up using the caps. The intention was for me to use them to repair my weapons should they break, because if I was left with no weapons, this was basically just turned into another pacifist run, and I've already done that before. But looking at the condition of my brass knuckles and Chance's knife, I figured I may have just enough to get me to the end. But I suppose we'll see. In the tops, I actually handed over my weapons for the time being, as I knew I'd be able to smuggle in my brass knuckles as well as my Sans 22 pistol, which should be more than enough for now. I tried to get a stealth kill with a pistol on Benny, but my gun skill is atrocious, so I'm only able to injure him. No matter though, as thanks to the teleportation powers of VATS, I'm able to dance around and take him out in a few hits. On the way out, I end up alerting the chairman and take out a few of them, including Swank. Don't worry, I'll be back to deal with him shortly. I just needed to head over to deal with Mr. House first, as there's a bed in his suite and I need to heal myself. For some reason, even after opening the wall to House's secret room, the Securitrons don't really seem all that intent on stopping me, so I easily head down and take out House. With House out of the way, I figure the rest of the strip should follow, so I start by heading to Gomorrah. It's not a New Vegas video if I don't kill the Omertas after all. As per usual, fancy suits don't save them from a punching and stabbing maniac, so I won't waste too much time on the slaughter. This sort of also extends to when I head back to the tops to finish off the last of them. Granted, some of the gamblers there did try to play hero a few times, but I just forward smashed them to their demise. While here, I also grabbed Yes Man and got him to haul his way over to the Lucky 38 while I dealt with the white gloves. The gloves for once proved to be a bit more difficult as they shatter my bones with their walking sticks. There's something quite ironic about that sentence now that I think about it. Thankfully though, they seem to be forbidden from leaving the confines of their casino, so once I get too injured I can pop outside and then drink this water until I'm healed up. After I finish drinking the water, I get informed that the white gloves now vilify me. I assume that this is because I killed a bunch of them, but I am choosing to believe it's because I'm currently desecrating this fountain of theirs. Going back inside to finish the job, and I managed to hit level 12. So you know what that means. With my promise fulfilled and the casinos in ruins, it's about time I start meeting the other factions. I figure starting with the Brotherhood first is probably the wisest idea, as they are currently the easiest to get to. I actually decided to bust out the guns once again and start disintegrating all the bark scorpions I can find. I forgot how satisfying it can be to use laser weapons in Fallout. As I encounter the Brotherhood, I thought that thanks to the Piercing Strike and Super Slam perks, I may have been able to stand a chance against a few at the door, but that's not the case this time, as I just don't have the defenses or healing supplies to survive. So I agree to go and deal with the Ranger, but first, my equipment is of course stripped from me. This means that since my Merc Grunt outfit has long since been destroyed, I cannot re-equip it, so it looks like I am naked from here on out. I'm able to get the jump on Dobson as well as knock him down, so I get through the fight relatively unharmed. I then report back to the Elder, and once he's done, I leave and decide I will have nothing more to do with the Brotherhood and that next up is the Great Khans. Seeing how I already tempted fate at the beginning of the run when I went north of Goodsprings to dig up Chance's grave, I decided to try my luck again and reach Red Rock that way. I also felt that this would genuinely be a lot quicker than trying to run east from Freeside, plus I would almost certainly be attacked by more Legion assassins if I went that way, and seeing how open that road is, I wouldn't have anywhere to hide. First trying, things are going well as I walk along the top of these rocks, but because New Vegas has a fascination with invisible walls, I get stuck and literally can't do anything, so I load back and try again. Next time I get a bit further but end up getting spotted, and rather than accept my death, I choose to stand my ground and fight. I get poisoned almost immediately, but I managed to give as good as I got and took out the Cazador in the process. I full well expected to just die of the dot damage, but once again my high endurance saves the day, and I just about hang on with a small margin of health. My luck also shines through again as I miraculously fend off 2 young Cazadors without getting hurt at all. Feeling confident, I drop a save and get ready to sneak around the mountain, but then, of course, another one comes out and manages to poison me and I die. Thank goodness for that save. I load back, and rather than taking my time, I instead go as fast as I can towards the mountain and then just scale it like a Skyrim horse, as despite the fact that the little devils have wings, they still have to abide by their horrible 2010 pathing. This plan ends up working to perfection, and I am able to quite literally run straight to Red Rock Canyon and meet the Khans. Now, I would do my usual killing spree, but by this point, Chance's knife and the brass knuckles are almost on their last legs, so I want to try and save them for the Hoover Dam battle. With that in mind, once I get the prompt that I have engaged the Khans, I just fast travel back to Freeside and make my way for the Boomers. Since my health can't be easily healed this time, I also take the slow and careful approach when entering Nellis as to not be exploded. My leg still gets crippled due to the blast radius, mind you, but it's better than being on death's door. You know how in the last paragraph I mentioned I didn't kill the Khans so I could save on weapon durability? Well, for some reason that didn't apply to the Boomers in my eyes, even though they are a lot more dangerous than the Khans. Pearl is never a hassle, and as for the guards and Raquel, I just lure them back into Pearl's quarters and quickly deal with them there. With all the factions out of the way, I report back to Yes Man and tell him I don't care about the president for reasons, and now it's off to the substation. I also use my brass knuckles to kill all the soldiers there, which wasn't too hard, I can assure you. With that, the moment of truth was here. Would I be able to beat the Legate before my weapons turned into dust? When on top of the dam and while inside, I just stayed behind the Securitron where possible, and if that wasn't an option, I would use my brass knuckles, as I feel that Chance's knife would be my only chance, of winning against Lanius. Getting to the switch to destroy the generators was easy enough. It was the aftermath where I basically had to hide in this room and hope that the NCR and Legion didn't rush in all at once and kill me. I did have to switch to the knife a few times here just for the added DPS to help out in tough situations. I just about managed to survive, but before heading outside, I went up the stairs as there's a few toilets and sinks which I can drink out of to give me a better chance. I thought that once I got back outside that my reinforcements would prove to be somewhat useful, but it turns out they all got wiped out in a matter of seconds, so I had to just make a mad dash for the Legate's camp and hope I didn't get my head blown off on the way. It ends up taking me a few attempts to even get to the Legate, as the Praetorian guards between me and him can make short work of me with their ballistic fists. After a few attempts, I'm able to get lucky enough with some super slams and proceed to the Legate, but once again before that I heal up in this small irradiated pool of water. The things we must do to survive. Now for the real test. Thanks to increasing my speech skill to about 80, I can at the very least fight him one-on-one, as let's be fair, it was either that or talk him down. Well, the fight starts, I hit him a few times in VATS, and then he instantly puts me face down in the dirt in about 2 to 3 swings. Not really surprising considering I have no armor. I try again and this time try blocking. This doesn't really work either, as the sheer amount of damage he does just goes straight through my block and once again kills me. On one attempt I tried using my guns to see if I could maybe either disarm him or destroy his weapon, but after trying I'm almost certain that his Blade of the East's condition doesn't degrade. Other strategies involve me trying to get him stuck in a tent due to bad pathing and stay on top of this box and shooting at him, but when I tried the latter, he pulled out his piece and just capped me. Alright, not gonna lie, I'm not mad about that one. Didn't even know the Legate had a pistol he could use. After about a dozen attempts, I decided to try using VATS and then backing off until my AP refilled, and then use VATS again, and then just rinse and repeat. Amazingly, I was able to get the Super Slam to trigger while in VATS, and then just started laying into him as quick as I could with Chance's knife. Luck is the only reason this was ever going to work, as when he was trying to regain his footing, I would knock him down again and then eventually stun lock him on the ground until finally he succumbed to his wounds. Not only was I lucky the perk triggered, but looking at the condition of the knife, I am beyond relieved that it didn't break during the fight, or I probably would still be stuck here. Out of curiosity, I did attack his corpse with the knife until it broke, and not really surprisingly, it broke just after 7 more swings, so that should give an idea of just how close this fight was. I then went over to greet Oliver, and died. Luckily, I always make sure to save after killing the Legate in case this happens, so I just load back, drink some more water, and then when Oliver attacks I just move out of the way and let Yes Man and my robots take care of the NCR. With that, I talk to Yes Man, finishing the game, and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas as a Graverobber. This was easily one of the most difficult runs so far, as you're essentially at the mercy of the game as to what weapons you'll get and how much ammo. I'm honestly so glad I got those brass knuckles, otherwise Chance's knife would have broken a lot earlier in the run, and I probably would have had to resort to speech with the Legate. Regardless, that's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and if you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to try to have one of these videos out every week. My name is Nerbit, stay safe everyone, and I'll see y'all in the next video.